And hi, everyone. This is Stacy Chazen with Open, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this month's call of Open's Action for Medicare Dental Learning Collaborative. As I shared, today's call is being recorded, and we'll be posting it on Open Communities and sharing it with the listserv for this group. We ask everyone to please keep themselves on mute until they're ready to speak, but please feel free to take yourself off mute and contribute to the conversation. Please use the chat box as well if you want to share a resource, pose a question, answer a question. And we strongly encourage you to turn your camera on if you're in a place where you could do so. Lastly, we encourage you to add your personal pronouns to your name on your Ring Central screen. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Bailey Rivas with Families USA.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good Monday so far. I almost said afternoon, but I don't think we're all in the same time zone. So I hope everyone's having a good Monday, whatever time of the Monday it might be for you. I think today's call is going to be mostly looking at the medically necessary issue that I know we've all been engaging with so much this year. So just a quick refresh for some folks who maybe haven't been as engaged. The Medicare physician fee schedule, which came out, I don't know, I guess at this point, a couple months ago, included language that clarified the role of medically necessary dental coverage and really maximized the coverage involved in that. And there was a comment period that closed in September, focused on allowing groups to weigh in on Center for Medicare's decision to include in the physician fee schedule. So thanks to everyone who participated in the comment process. We know that there was a really good turnout with with hundreds of comments submitted, many of those positive. I personally have not read through the 300 some odd comments, but through the grapevine have heard that a lot of those were a majority of them were extremely positive, which is really exciting. I'm going to share the Families USA comment that we submitted. I know many of you all weighed in on specific components of the proposed rule beyond just the higher level template comments that were shared. So I would just love to open up for folks to talk about, specific or important aspects from their rules that they might have shared, if anyone had anything they wanted to volunteer while I share the Families comment. Unless no one had anything that they think is specifically different. I mean, I know a lot of folks have different constituencies, so even if it's something that's just specific to the constituency that you submitted, I think it's always good for us to just hear from each other on the issues that we care about within these spaces. So if anyone had anything, feel free.
Okay, I mean, I'll chime in. The Center for Medicare Advocacy submitted comments, tried to cover as many areas that the agency was asking for input on, even though, the agency was asking for a lot of clinical information that, as a law firm, we didn't really have that expertise, but we tried to echo what other groups had stated as far as like the clinical scenarios. We tried to stay very, very positive throughout our comments, because we definitely, this is our chance to get some expansion of coverage. So we really did try to stay as positive as possible, while also kind of encouraging the agency to, look at the possibility of, making a legal standard that wouldn't later on kind of be restrictive in any way. So we did ask them to remove the language of inextricably linked, just because it's just very confining language to say that a dental treatment has to be inextricably linked to a medical procedure or treatment. You're just not going to find much in clinical literature that's going to say something's kind of a dental is inextricably linked. Decision makers down the line could, really interpret that very strictly. We also did encourage the agency to kind of relax these kind of supervision requirements on mid-level dental professionals too, and allow, coverage to extend more, more broadly than just saying dentist. So, yeah. As far as the payment, we don't have the expertise on, how payment should go, but we did echo, we encouraged the agency to really look closely at California Dental Association's recommendations for reimbursement and payment structure. So.
Thank you so much, Wei Wei. Anybody else have anything from theirs that they would like to share with the group?
And I want to call out too, if you want to share anything in the chat, feel free to do that, the link.
Yeah, I was going to say, folks should definitely drop if they have a link to their comments. And then that way folks can go through too at their own time. And I will just note, I don't see Chelsea on, but I know that specifically want to highlight that we heard from some of the folks who I know have been reticent about medically necessary dental in the past, that actually the comments that came through were significantly more positive and supportive of the administration's actions in the Medicare physician fee schedule. Sorry, saying that too fast, on this issue. And so that's really exciting that I think some of the folks who haven't necessarily always been on the same page as us in this conversation were actually significantly closer to a lot of the groups here. So I think that just will helpfully bolster going forward when the administration moves to finalize them. We also had some really great support from our allies in Congress on this issue. So we had a letter from the Senate and the House earlier in the summer telling CMS that they would support the administration taking action on medically necessary. Their participation in this is especially important because they wrote the law originally, so they can really bolster the legislative intent argument for the administration, which supports HHS and CMS, the Center for Medicare Services, decision to take action here, and it just makes it easier if there's ever concerns from oversight or litigation down the line. But it also just kind of goes to show how popular of an issue and the continued focus on oral health care. I specifically wanted to highlight, so the House did submit a comment, like a formal comment with over 100 members, which is honestly huge because comments are wonky and technical, and those are two things that members of Congress typically don't engage on a large scale outside of the actual legislative process. So the fact that there was a huge turnout and so many members re-signing from the letter earlier in the summer just underlines that it's important, and it just really highlights all of the important work you all put in, getting Congress focused on these issues, and how important dental coverage or oral health coverage generally is, but how seriously Congress continues to take this issue. If it were something that a lot of members weren't that worried about, I don't think they would have taken time to sign on to a technical comment. So really exciting. I'll go ahead and share the press release on that in the chat in a minute so folks can look through the members. I think if you did any outreach on this, if you've talked to any members about it, it's always just really good to give them a thank you. It helps continue to give them incentive to continue to focus on it when they receive thank yous. And then it makes it easier later when we have actual asks for them as well to be able to be like, oh, well, we thank you when you do it. So always good.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, could you say something about the extent to which there's been any pushback around it and what the focus of that is, if much of anything?
Pushback for the administration to take action?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, on the proposed rule.
So other groups having pushback, their concerns on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if Melissa, sorry, Melissa, not to call you out. I know you have been in this space a little bit longer, and if you have anything.
Yeah, I can weigh in. Sorry, folks, I'm still coming back from my first bout with COVID, so I'm going to stay off camera. But anyway, yes. So the good news is there hasn't been large scale pushback, and the pushback has been less than one might have expected, particularly from some of the organized industry groups that really put their stake in to block, a comprehensive benefit in Congress. That said, I think that there has been some attempts to keep this coverage, more narrow, more specific, really, weigh in on the ways that it could be designed for payment. Like, so I think there are certainly groups that want to keep this as small and contained as possible, but there hasn't been the same sort of like broad dental provider organization pushback that we expected. Some of those provider organizations were more supportive than others. The ADA was more supportive than anyone would have expected in their comments, even if they weren't perfect. But I do think, the bigger questions will come in once this is finalized, what happens in terms of pushback, in terms of slowing down implementation and or trying to undo things in implementation. Like we just don't know what that might look like, but overall, much less opposition than we would have thought.
Great. That's great to hear and really helpful. Thanks, Melissa.
And this is Mike. I would agree with Melissa. I think the Academy of General Dentistry's whole response was that CMS didn't have authority to make any changes. So, but I don't think that will go far. I think the AMA spent a lot of time talking about that this isn't the time yet, that we need to do more pilot programs and more research in the background to be able to move things forward. And they're unhappy about if any funds to pay for oral care come out of the physician rates. But I think we have a good answer to that, so that should be okay. And then I agree that the ADA was supportive, and I guess better than I would have expected, but still not all the way.
Thanks. Melissa appreciates your jumping in there.
Can I ask a question? I just want to go back to the comment you made about the inextricably linked sentence. And I'm wondering, did your organization or any other organizations propose any alternatives to that? I'm thinking that language is in there because CMS is worried about sort of runaway use of dental care and wanting to put some strict walls around it so that it really is paying for something that's related to the medical conditions they're already paying for, so that we don't have bad outcomes from the medical condition. And so I think that for them to take seriously the idea that inextricably linked is too harsh a language, I think they would have to have some alternative to that. Has anybody proposed alternatives to that language?
Well, we propose that they just take out inextricably linked, but leave in substantially related and integral to.
Okay.
The success of the clinical success of a covered service.
Okay.
Did anybody else include language along those lines? Okay. I also wanted to add to Stacy's question about some of the opposition. While it wasn't opposition per se, we know that there had been some hesitation within Health and Human Services about taking action in this space because they were concerned about their essentially legal authority to do so. And so I think that just underlines too why congressional support for their action and saying that the law as we wrote it does give you the ability to do this is just continues to be important. So having congressional allies involved continues to be really valuable to kind of bolster the administration in this space. I didn't want to move forward if there were any other questions. I can pause. Okay. So I shared the public statement from the House members' comment. So yeah, if folks have time to drop a thank you to those offices, always helpful. And then the Senate also, they did a letter as opposed to a formal comment. So it wrapped up just recently. And I actually don't have a final number, but last I saw it was extremely close to the 20 senators that they had on their comment earlier, or on their letter earlier this summer as well. So once we get, and I haven't seen a press release for that either, so I definitely need to follow up with them and can get those names around to folks as well. So they can go ahead and thank any senators that they spoke to. So again, I just think that it's both valuable for the medically necessary conversation to have Congress continuing to be involved, but I think it's just good for us to know that their continued involvement shows that they still care about this issue. Obviously there's going to be a new Congress starting in 2023, opportunity to come back to them and discuss legislative solutions for Medicare involvement. So, or Medicare, extending Medicare coverage in the dental space or bolstering it. And so the more that Congress continues to care about this, continues to talk about it, it just means that our advocacy on these issues in the future will continue to be, there are people that are interested in taking action. So it's always good for us to know how they feel on these things too. I will say next steps for this. So the rule will be finalized sometime between now and the end of the year. The good news is because it's part of the Medicare physician fee schedule, there is a specific time that has to be released. The final version has to be released. Unlike a lot of other rules where they can just kind of be finalized whenever they get around to it. This one we know will have a specific deadline before the end of the year. I think we can anticipate it in November or December. We're definitely going to want to do something public, likely of support, assuming that they don't make any major changes from the proposed one, which we don't really anticipate will happen. We'll definitely want to be public, either, in support or with concerns when that does happen. So we'll be back in touch with this group, sometime in the coming months around that. Does anybody have any questions from any of that?
Bailey, I responded to a private message in the chat, so I just want to flag. So I apologize if you answered this while I was doing that. But Shirley Lewis asked if the American Public Health Association addressed the issue.
I don't know off the top of my head. Is anyone? Oh,
there we go. Wait.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say what Wei said actually, but I don't know if the APHA submitted comments to CMS, but they have been very supportive. They've signed the community statement, which is sort of the stakeholder sign-on letter in general support of this issue, and they have weighed in their own sort of internal policy development in support of Medicare dental broadly, and at times specifically on this issue. So certainly they are supportive, but I don't know that they whether or not they've submitted comments.
Thanks, Melissa and Wei. Any other questions from folks before I move forward?
Bailey, this is Tanya. Sorry if you said this already. Got construction people here, so I keep getting distracted. Can you remind me, I think you said that you have a list, or you shared a list of the members of Congress that did support. Did you, is that in the chat and I just missed it?
Yeah, I can reshare it. I shared the press statement from Representative Doggett's office that includes the names of the folks who signed, but I can redrop it in the chat.
That's all I need. I appreciate that. Thank you. Sorry for making your.
Oh, no problem. I can relate so much. Okay, perfect. Well, I also, I think that's a good segue into a little bit of a broader conversation that I thought would be helpful to have. We wanted to have an opportunity for folks to talk about how this went for them. Thanks again to Justice and Aging and Center for Medicare Advocacy for helping us to put together this template. It was, I wanted to just essentially open up the floor to folks to see if they how they felt about doing this kind of advocacy. Is this the type of advocacy that y'all might be interested in? If there are future issues at the rulemaking level to participate in? Was the template helpful? Sorry, that's a little bit three different questions. So did folks use the template? Did they find it helpful? Would that be something folks would appreciate in the future? I guess is a good starting question. It's okay if the answer is no. We want to make sure that we're providing resources to folks that they find useful. So
Yeah, this is Marla from Oral Health Ohio. Yes, the templates were very, very helpful, and Wayway was exceptionally helpful with sort of tweaking one specifically that we sent out to Ohio stakeholders. I'm not sure that anybody submitted comments, but in terms of, you know, clinical comments, but they were very, very helpful. Our challenge was that we asked the ODA if they could support it, and they would not, were not able to support it until they saw what the ADA was going to do with it. So when we sent out the email to stakeholders, we said that the ADA was still, developing their response. And unfortunately, the response, I think, came pretty close to the deadline. Is that correct, Wayway? Because I never saw the response and I never was able to get follow-up. So anyway, that was just sort of the Ohio experience.
Super helpful. Did anybody else have any experience with the template that they want to share, or? And thank you to Tanya for the comment in the chat. I think, yeah. And I think that's a good, so the other, thing that I'd love to ask folks is if there are other similar oral health priorities that there are rulemakings on, is this the kind of advocacy that folks found, helpful? We're interested in participating in. I know it's really different than the typical legislative advocacy that I know so many of us engage in. And it is more technical and it is more in the weeds than some of the conversations at the congressional level. So are folks interested, or was it maybe too intimidating or stressful?
I think it was stressful just because we didn't have that much time, and then also, a template that might work for one organization might just be too detailed for another. So like if in the future, I think going into it, I didn't realize it was going to be this, tough with the time constraint, especially because in this proposed rule, the agency was asking so many different questions. And, I think the commenters were right that it was kind of unrealistic, especially during the summer months, to try to get all of the information they were looking for. Yeah, so would have been nice. I think we were all just very surprised by the proposed rule too. We did not know that was going to be happening so soon. So, yeah.
I'll say I think it's a testament to the work that you did, Wayway, with the listening sessions, that it happened so quickly. So we can't say enough how thankful we are for your support and help in doing that. And I think it surprised everyone. So it was a quick turnaround. But I think the fact that there's more and more oral health responses to these requests is really important. And the more we do it, the more we'll get better at it, because there's always a series of them.
This is Mary at MDAC. I have multiple comments. The templates were great. They were so good. And I really appreciate the guidance and information. And I echo what Mike was saying about Wayway. I mean, it was stressful enough, and Wayway took the time to spend an hour on the phone with our government affairs consultant and me trying to figure out what to do. And then finally, it was a great opportunity for me to reach out to our network experts in particular that I have not communicated with in the past, and now I have a relationship with, which is terrific. And those are oral surgeons from Johns Hopkins, because it was getting into the weeds that I was clueless about, absolutely clueless about, in terms of how to answer. And so finding the resources and trying to figure out what to say was really, really hard. So we reached out, obviously, to them, and they were incredibly helpful in providing really great information for our response. So yeah, I echo the time. I echo how surprising it was, but it was also, once we submitted it, it was like, phew, but you felt good about it as well at the same time, because people really were participatory in it, at least in the network in Maryland. So again, thank you, Wei Wei. You were fabulous in
Well,
terms
Mary,
of giving guidance.
Mary, thank you. I mean, your comments were just really, really compelling and very helpful comments. I hope they will read them closely, carefully.
Well, the good news is we'll continue to use them. But thank you again.
Yeah, that's super helpful feedback. And yeah, it really, yeah, thanks to Wei Wei, thanks to so many of the groups who I know have done a lot of technical work in this space that was helpful for the whole group. I think one thing for folks to maybe think about if it would be helpful for future types of regulation advocacy is instead of a template where you individualize it, another option is a sign-on. So, one person writes the comment and groups can sign on and say, so it's like from a collective group. Some folks think that it's more helpful to have the individual comments because it's just more people. As Mary said, or, as Mary alluded to, you can have like really specific feedback from your specific viewpoint, which I think is extremely helpful to the administration. But, if next time, well, there won't be a next time potentially on medically necessary until next year's Medicare physician fee schedule, depending. But on potential other future issues, if folks think that that's something they'd be interested in, definitely keep us posted, or, we can talk about it next time we all come around to this. But I think it's just helpful as we're all discussing. We don't, to the best of my knowledge, there's no immediate next federal executive HHS related policy that's in the docket for conversation, but I think it's just good for us to know as we're discussing issues moving forward, and trying to figure out how to engage with the administration, what groups have found helpful and what groups have not. So thank you for the conversation. Did anyone else have any feedback that they wanted to give? I didn't mean to pivot away from that. Great. Well, I think I just have one other main thing to flag. There's not a whole lot happening between now and the end of the year. Congressionally, outside of funding the government and seeing whatever happens in the last couple of months between, month-ish between the election and the end of the year, there might be some policies happening in the lame duck period. We don't, at the moment, anticipate anything major happening in the oral health space. At least we haven't heard from any of the folks in Congress that there will be any major policies moving. We'll definitely keep folks posted if that changes. But I do know that between now and November, a lot of organizations, while you may not be interacting directly in electoral work, if you're interacting with any candidates, any folks running for office, just want to, essentially highlight that we want to continue to use the momentum that you all have built over the past couple of years on oral health coverage to continue to have those conversations with folks, either at the state or the federal level, whichever office they might be running for. It's just really great to continue to get folks running for office talking about this issue. We know that it's extremely popular among the public, so that's important, and we know that it's important for legislators to be able to be elected talking about these issues and to be able to work with them once they're in office on these issues. And that's a lot easier if they've already heard about it, if they're already talking about it, if they're already having conversations with folks in their districts or in their states about it. So just want to take the opportunity. So anyone having conversations over the next month with people running for office, just always really good to raise oral health, either how it impacts your state, your district, or just generally, the issue. Did folks have any questions or anything they wanted to add on that? Okay. Great. Well, I think that's all I had from my standpoint. Stacey, was there anything else that?
I'll just flag the next call of this group will be on November 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So this was actually, the call today on October 3rd was actually our September call that needed to be pushed a little bit due to a conflict. So we'll be meeting on November 30th. That's our last call of the year, of the calendar year. And we'll be reaching out to you in the coming months to survey your interest in how we move forward as a learning collaborative. So the types of support that would be useful for you, the topics you'd like to see us cover. I know sometimes that's kind of dictated to us in part by opportunities that present themselves, but to hear from you about frequency of meetings, tools you'd like to see, etc. So please be on the lookout for that survey. We'll probably send it out to you in November. And I think that's all. Yep, November 30th, 2 p.m. Eastern. So with that, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Bailey for leading us deftly in this conversation today, and to folks for sharing their resources and their feedback. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.